going to be a quick demo of how to distribute crystals around the inside of a cave without the use of geometry nodes. We're going to keep this low poly. We're going to keep our materials super minimal because you'll probably want to make new shaders for this in the future. And the main challenge here, which we'll focus on, is carefully distributing those crystals, because we know how to scatter things, but we want to be able to scatter them along a plane. We're going to use an old trick for that from before the days of geometry nodes. We're just going to use a hair modifier. But to start, let's make some really simple materials and a simple cave and simple crystals. We'll do materials, crystal, cave. That'll be our order. So to start, let's just set up our materials. So we have a cube here, and we'll create a new material for that. We'll go to material view, and for our cave material, we're just going to take the default and turn it gray by turning down the base color here. That's it, we're done. So we'll rename that cave, and now we will create a duplicate cube here just for a second, and we'll remove the material from that. We'll create a new one, and this one we'll just kind of make it pink, and to make it a little more crystally, we'll take the roughness and turn it to 0 so it's shiny, and then we're going to take the alpha number here and just change it to, I don't know, 0.6, so it's kind of mostly transparent. You can see the other thing through it, and you can see it's kind of weird and grainy right now, and that's because we're using a newer version of the newest version of Blender, and the newer version of Eevee, which is the render engine we're using, has some new ways of dealing with transparency. So we're going to turn those new ways off. So we'll scroll down, and here where it says dithered, we're going to switch it to blended. And now there it is. We've got our very basic crystal material. So we'll go up to the material tab and call that crystal. And now we will delete that cube entirely. We don't need it, but you can see we've got both our materials there and the tab and a little extra one I created by accident. We'll just forget about that. So now I'll press H to hide the cube, and I'll press Shift A, and we're going to make our crystals real quick. And these are so fun to make, because so much fun to make because they're just so simple. So we'll add a cylinder, and here where there's this little menu box on the bottom, we'll turn that up and we'll change that number from 32 down to 7. And if you don't see that box there, just delete your cylinder and add it again. It just means you accidentally clicked out in space somewhere. We can also go ahead and set the material on this to crystal. So now we can see it looks like a crystal. We can also rename the cylinder to crystal. So we've got a good naming method going on. So that's looking pretty good. We're going to press G for grab. We're going to press Z for Z axis. So it's just moving up and down. Now I'm going to hold down the control key, control on Mac too, not command. So it snaps, so it's just right on the floor. And now I'm going to go ahead and press Control A and apply all transformations. So now we got our origin point right at the bottom of that crystal. So now we'll go into edit mode on this. Press the number 3 for face select. We'll select the bottom, scale it in a little bit. Press the top. We'll press the letter E for extrude, extrude that up. And yeah, I think that looks good. Maybe I'll just press G and Z and extrude it up a little more. And now I'm going to press 1, so we're in point view, or vertex view. We can see those points. And I'm going to press the letter M for merge and merge those at center. And now we've got ourselves the beginning of a crystal. So this looks pretty good. I think we can make it look a little more dramatic. So I'm going to press A for select all, still in edit mode, S for scale, and then I'm going to press Shift and Z, so it scales on everything with a Z axis, and we'll just make the whole thing a little skinnier. And I think I'll press 3 for face, make the bottom a little smaller too, and now we have a nice crystal to work with. So we're going to object mode. We got our crystal here. This is looking pretty good. Now we could keep it in material mode, but if you're on a slower computer, that might be a problem. So I'm going to press the letter Z. And now I'm going to switch to solid view so we just see the structure. So we've got our crystal here. I'm going to press Shift and D, and you can see I've got another crystal, but I'm going to right click, and that just drops it right where the other one is. And you can see we have crystal 1, and now I'm going to press Shift R, Shift R, Shift R. So now we've got crystal 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5 crystals here. That's great. I'm going to box select around them. I can see in my outliner here that it selected all of them. I'm going to press Shift D. Now I'm going to press the letter Y. I'm going to move this bundle of 5 crystals a decent distance away. Now I'm going to press Shift R again. So we got 3 bundles of crystals. And now we're going to make these look much cooler. So it was really important, though, that we kept that pivot point at the bottom. If your pivot point is not at the bottom of your crystals, you should really just start the tutorial again to see where you went wrong. So now I'm going to press, and I say pivot point, sorry, I mean origin point. I'm going to press A to select all, and now I'm going to press the period key, and I'm going to switch our origin point from median to individual origins. And just to see what that means, if I rotate this now, you can see it just rotates along the middle. Press right click or escape to cancel that. Press period, switch it to individual origins on the period point, on the pivot point. And now you can see they rotate on their own origin. Press escape again. And you can kind of see where this is going. So now that we've done that, we'll hit the spacebar key, and I'm going to type random. We're in object mode here. Randomize transform. And now I can go to this rotation section, and I'm going to go ahead and click and drag down to highlight all of them. And as I go out, you can see the crystals kind of open up into little beautiful crystal blossoms. And I think that that is a real term. So that looks good. And now I'm also going to click and drag down on scale and just drag it a little bit. And there you can see our crystal blossoms. I'm going to say irregularize. I know that's probably not a real word, but there we go. And if you see a few things you don't like in there, you can go up to random seed and change your variety until you see something you like. In this case, I mostly like it. There's a couple little fat ones I don't like. They just don't look quite plausible for crystals. So back in object mode, I'm just going to custom that one. So here I'll press S, and you can see if I press Z, it's just for the whole world. But if I press Z again, it's for the crystal. So I'll scale that one up, and then maybe I'll press S again and scale it down a little bit, rotate it out. And because of that origin point, it should all move pretty well. Also got a lost crystal here. I don't want that. So you can see just kind of rotating that one around. S, Shift Z. That looks a little weird. Shift Z again. Now it's local. Great. Shrink that one down. Rotate it out. And you can also just be happy with the random crystals you got, you know. That's also fine. I just like to customize them a little bit. Now, an aesthetic concern, this bundle here in the middle, because it's got one really tall crystal, is kind of distinctive. And because we're going to be duplicating these, we might not want that. So one thing we could do if we want even more variety is I can press Shift D. Sorry, I can select all of these and press Shift D and X and move these crystals here. I can actually search and do randomized transform again. And just get a whole nother selection. In the case of these, change the scaling a little bit. I'm not going to tweak those. So now we've got a whole bunch of different crystals. I can also yeah, those all look great. And now we want to make sure we can select them without selecting the others. So we're going to go through that. So I'm going to look at the top. I'm going to take my select tool. And I'm going to go to lasso select. And we want to just turn each of these bundles of crystals into one mesh. So I'll select right around that one. And then I'm going to, we might be fine with the box select actually. So then I'll shift select. So we've got an active, and I'll press Control J. And they're just all one object now. So we'll just do the same thing here. Being a little picky about my order, picky about my crystals there. Don't need to do that. Control J. Select those, Control J. And if it doesn't let you merge them, it's because you need an active selection. So you can see if I just box select these, they're all red. But if I shift select one, now we've got a yellow one. Now, because we've only rotated and scaled these, they all have an origin point in the same place. So it doesn't matter which one is your active. So got all those selected, Control J. I want that one sticking out a little more to the side, but we really don't need to be tweaking them. Control J. So now we should just have 6 crystals in here, which is great, which is already a lot to deal with. So we're going to select all of those, and we're going to press the letter M, which is move to collection, and we're going to create a new collection, and we're going to call it, you guessed it, crystal. So now we've got a whole bunch of crystals inside a crystal collection. So here in the outliner, we can press the little eyeball and hide that whole collection, and now we'll turn this cube on. So we'll rename this cube to be cave, and now we're going to quickly turn this into a very rudimentary cave. So similar to the crystal, we're going to press G to grab, Z for Z-axis, Control, bring it right up to the floor level. I'm going to press the period key and make sure we're back on median point for our pivot, because weird things can happen if you forget you changed it. And now I'll press Control A, apply all transforms, get that point to the bottom. I can see that the dimensions here, if you don't see this menu here, you can press the letter M, wrap them up. I can see the dimensions here are just 2 meters, which is kind of low for a cave. So I'm going to press S, 4. So now we've got 8 meters. Cozy cave, but should work just fine. And I'll press Control A and apply all transforms again. All right, now we will go into edit mode, and we'll click this drop down up here for overlays, and we're going to turn on face orientation. So this cube is blue, and if we delete one side, you can see the inside is red. We'll just undo that for now. So for this will be pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and keep the front of this as just one face. So instead of subdividing this cube, which I could do, I'm going to press Control R and loop cut it. And I'm going to just put 1 or 2 cuts and then click once. You can see these are moving, but if I right click, it'll drop them right in the middle. So now we've got our loop cutted cave. It's still, you may notice our cave looks like a cube, but it's going to start looking better soon. So now I will press A for select all, and I'll press Shift D. We've got 2. We're in edit mode here. Now I'm going to press Shift Z, so it's just moving on the floor. I'll just move this over here maybe. And I'm going to rotate. Again, I'm going to press the letter Z now, so we're rotating on the Z axis. So they kind of face each other. That's close enough. And I will select this face. We'll select this face, and we'll press the space bar or F3 for search, depending on how you have it set up. And I'm going to type bridge. Here we have bridge edge loops. So we've got this connection here. And if you don't see this little menu, there it is, bridge edge loops. We'll open that up. And here for cuts, we'll just increase that. And you'll see we get a nice little curvy tunnel. Now I realize this still doesn't look so much like a cave, but I promise we're getting there. All right, so now we're going to press 3 to make sure we're in face select. We're going to press A for select all, and we're just going to right click and go to subdivide, and this is subdivide in edit mode, not with a modifier. And now we're going to turn our cuts up to 2. We're going to turn our smoothness up to 1, and we're going to take the fractal and just crank that up to whatever number looks satisfying. If you see little red things appear, that means you've gone too far. So I think about 1.2 looks good. So now we've got a little more irregularity. And to get even more irregularity, we are going to go to select and random. And I'm going to turn the ratio down a little bit so we don't have so much random selected. That looks good. Now, if I press S, you can see those faces just get bigger. But if I press Option S, they kind of move away from each other in the direction that the normal space. Press Escape there. And even better, if I turn on proportional editing and press Option S, now we can really scale up and kind of blobify this tunnel, make it more regular. And with that still selected, we can grab a few faces and drag them out here and there. To make our cave even more irregular. I can also just select a big section, even shrink it so the cave gets smaller at the end. And I think that looks pretty good. Now I want there to be something flat in this cave structure. So I'm going to press Option and Z. So we're in X-ray mode. I'm going to look at it straight from the side. I'm going to select everything that's below the red line. So just make a box select there. And I'm going to press S and Z. I'm not actually going to zero it. I'm just going to look at this manually and get it close to 0. And now I'll press A and G and Z and move it up. So we've got our big lumpy cave shape, and we'll just select the front and press X and delete faces. Now we can see into our cave. We want the inside of the cave to be blue. We're actually going to be flipping things back and forth a bit. So I'm going to press A, search, and Option flip, and we'll flip normal. So the inside is blue and the outside is red because we're making an interior space here. Now we can switch back to object mode and finally put the crystals into the cave. At this point, we can go to viewport overlays and turn face orientation off. Here we have our cave. We have our crystal bundles, which you can see are all in their own group, and we're ready to put this together. So we'll click on the cave and we'll go right below the modifier tab to particles, and we'll just add particle simulation. And if we hit play, you'll see little marbles fall out of this all over the place. That's not what we want. We'll click over to hair, and now you see we have all these sticks going in. Now, if your sticks are going out instead of in, that probably means that your normals are on the outside. So if we go here to back to showing face orientation, you can see it's red on the outside, blue on the inside. All right, so we'll go back, turn that off. There's an item settings here. So now we don't need these sticks inside. We want them to be crystals. So now, first thing we're going to do is in the particle simulation, we're going to turn on advanced because we might need some advanced settings there. And then here we have this render as option, and we're going to render as object. And then we have a little dropper here. We can select a bundle of crystals. And now the crystals are spread out all over the mesh. But we don't want just one group of crystals. We want all of our group of crystals. We want all our different crystals to be used. So here we're going to switch it from object to collection. And for collection, we'll switch to crystals. And now we have a little more of a selection going on. And we're going to create more variation using the modifier, using the particle sim itself, which is a modifier. So we're going to turn on rotation. And we're going to look at scale here in the render section. And I'm going to scale these up just a little bit. And I can see that these crystals are all kind of growing along this cave, kind of like hair on an animal. We want them growing in. And the reason for that is we want these objects to be facing in the Y direction, not straight up. So we're going to grab our crystals right here. And you can see we can move them all around and it doesn't make a difference. So if they're in your cave, you kind of want to move them out so you don't see them in there. You just want the ones you're creating. And now we're going to rotate these on the x-axis so they face in the direction of positive y. So in that case, it was minus 90 on the x-axis. And I can see that they're facing positive y because if I look at the gimbal up here, you can see we've got y and then just green, that's negative y. So they're facing that direction. No difference yet, but we're going to press Control A, and we're not going to apply all transforms. We're just going to apply rotation. And now our crystals are going into the cave, which is great. So back to the cave, we're going to click here, and we are going to go to rotation. We're going to set some phase on that. And then we will randomize the phase. We've got our crystals rotated every which way. We then can scale them up a little bit, but we can also do some scale randomness. Now we've got crystals of different sizes popping out everywhere. And this looks pretty good. The only problem is maybe I don't want crystals all the way, all over the place. Maybe I don't want them on the floor. So we can fix that really easily. We're going to click on this cave here, and we're going to go to object mode here. We're going to go to weight paint. And you can see right now the whole cave is blue. And we're going to do something, and then we're going to undo and do it again. So you'll see in a moment. So the whole cave is blue, but we have this brush. And if we paint on the cave inside, and you can see we can't paint. Oh, yeah, we can paint the inside too. When we see through, yeah. So we've painted in a few areas on the cave. And now if we go back to object view, you can see nothing's happened yet, but if we go to the physics settings and we go to density and change it to group, because weight painting has created a group, now we only see crystals in that spot. Now, this will work well, but it's kind of tedious because I want to brush where I don't want crystals, not where I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into just plain edit mode, and I'm going to create a new group by clicking on the data properties, and I'm going to call it crystals. So I actually know what this one is called. And now you can see, oh, and I'm also going to press A, and I'm going to assign everything in my scene to that group. So I'll click assign, and now I can double check that by clicking select, and it'll select everything in that crystal group. So now if I go back to the physics section, and for the density, I can switch it to crystals, and now crystals are growing everywhere again. So now we can either go into weight paint and set the weight here to 0 and just paint away where we don't want crystals. And that works. That will work. It'll take a little time. You can see we can slowly remove them all from each area. But something we can do that will be even faster than that is we'll just go into edit mode and we'll look at our cave straight from the bottom. And I'm just going to select a bunch of points on the bottom of this cave. And, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. So sometimes I'm going up the sides. So I'm just kind of selecting some stuff on the bottom. Looks like I accidentally got a little higher up in a few places. I can do command select and unselect that, but it's okay to have a little bit. And now I'll go to the data properties and I'll click crystals and I'm going to click remove. And now if I go back to weight paint, you can see I've quickly removed a lot of stuff off the bottom because weight paint is just taking things in and out of groups. We go back to object mode, and now we got crystals in our cave, not too many on the floor, so there's somewhere to walk. Also, if you just want to go back into weight paint, we can just decide, you know, maybe we want like a bald patch there or a bald patch there with fewer crystals, and we can alter the distribution a little accordingly. And you'll see as we erase crystals, they kind of jump all over the place. And that's because the number of crystals is still the same, which is the number of objects. So going back to the particle sim, here it is, the number is set to 1,000. So if I set it to 1, we just have one lonely crystal somewhere. I can't even find it. We can crank that up and you can see we get more and more crystals as we go up and down. So I don't think we really need 1,000 for this scene. I think around 400 looks great. And then we can go into material mode and we can see that looks pretty nice. So that's it. You're ready to export this. Well, almost ready actually. So if you were rendering this, we could go into render view and add a sky and some lighting effects and cameras and stuff to give this a better look. But the idea here is not to actually render this. So we can just go back to material view. The idea here is we just want to use this as an exportable, exportable asset. So the last thing we want to do is we'll click on this main cave object and we'll go to particle system. And here's this option, make instances real. We'll click on that. And you can see it's created all these extra crystals coming off the cave. While they're still selected, I'm going to press M and press new selection and call them cave crystals, just so they're under control in their own little group. And then I'm going to select these crystals over here. We don't need those anymore. I'll just hide or delete those. And now we're ready to export this to use in other things. So to do that, we'll just go to File, Export, GLTF, include visible objects. We don't have any animation here. Just in case we have any modifiers we forgot about, we can go to Mesh, apply modifiers, and this will be ready to export. And we can now take this asset and bring it in to other editors like Unity, Unreal, Godot, A-Frame, etc., to make our XR environment. Now, Unity doesn't always use GLB by default, so if you're doing that, you want to go to export for Unity specifically, and you can export it as an FBX and choose visible objects again. This is just gray and clear. They're not the best materials, but they are completely compatible because it's just using alpha. So you could use these in your project, but you could also build custom shaders within the engine.